Okay. Hello, hello. Thank you all for coming out today for our WeDigBio event for Global. My name is Jessica Budke. I'm the Herbarium Director and the lead investigator on the Global project, and the Herbarium Director here at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about how a project that we worked on briefly a few years ago and are sort of wrapping up using biodiversity collections to think about bryophyte conservation in Tennessee. So let's see, be sure I've got where am I clicking? There we go. So first I want to sort of take a step back and think about how natural history collections can inform conservation science. And so I sort of did a brainstorming with another group of people and sort of came up with a big list of like how we can use natural history collections in conservation science. So one of them is sort of determining the occurrence of organisms across the landscape, identifying these potential gaps or biases in our sampling, like where have we not sampled or looked for particular rare plants for thinking about conservation, how we can track the distributions of organisms over time. So I probably mostly talk about plants and bryophytes, but this can sort of apply to animals as well. So how do we track their distributions under different climate scenarios? How can we document the life history of organisms, particularly for plants, thinking about their fruiting times, their flowering times, and how they may have changed? Collections can also serve as reference specimens for identifications or DNA sources that help you identify plants or animals. We also use collections to evaluate our state-listed rare species. And so I'm going to talk today about evaluating the state-listed rare bryophyte species for Tennessee and sort of how I've been participating in that as a project. So like many places do around the world and across the US, in Tennessee, we have a natural heritage program that is in charge of the rare plant list for the state of Tennessee. And essentially they have a scientific advisory council that consists of 12 botanists that are knowledgeable in the flora of the state of Tennessee. And we meet every 3 years to sort of look at this rare plant list, evaluate the plants, and help to make recommendations. I'm one of two bryological experts that sits on this committee that advises the rare plant list for the state of Tennessee. Our rare plant list has over 500 rare plant species that are tracked by the state, and 63 of those are bryophytes. So it's a pretty large number of species for us to try to keep up on. And one of the main ways they sort of track these specimens is by using these historical distributions of these species based on natural history collections. And so we end up with this big list of species that tell you where they're located in these physiogeographic provinces and something about their conservation rank. So today I'm going to talk to you about one moss species. This is Pamelocladium lescuides. It is a pleurocarpous moss. So what that means is mosses come in two major growth forms. Some of them are upright and unbranching. This one is a prostrate, so growing flat, and a highly branching. So that's what it means to be a pleurocarpous moss. And it's in a particular sort of family of mosses, the Brachythaceaceae. So one of the things we did was sort of pull down a bunch of data from the Bryophyte portal, which many of you are sort of participating in and working in, and GBIF, which is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, which sort of stores all of this specimen-based data. And so my collections manager, Margaret Oliver, helped us download a bunch of these data. And so one of the first things we did thinking about this rare species in Tennessee was to put together a distribution map. And so here you can see all the GBIF sort of occurrence records all around the world. And if we zoom in on North America, let's take a step back. We can see in North America, we're sort of at the most northern edge of the species distribution. And so if we zoom into the Southeast, there's actually not many historical or current records of this moss in the Southeastern US. And so the way we made all these maps was basically going to the portals and pulling down all of these data that you all are participating in sort of creating. And so when we went there, we found 3 historic locations in 3 counties in Tennessee. So we're sort of looking at this species and thinking about it as a rare bryophyte. How is it doing in Tennessee? Is it still extant? And so we located these 3 historic specimens. So some collected as far back as the 1960s, some in the 1920s, and these are in 3 different counties that are spread across the state of Tennessee. If you're interested in learning more about rare plants and looking at the rare plants in our specimen databases, you might run into a challenge in that many of our rare plants, we hide the specific locality data. So you might be able to see what county they're in, but you might not be able to go to them specifically. So if you're ever interested either in studying them scientifically or helping out with monitoring and tracking these rare plants, you can reach out to your local herbarium or your local Department of Environmental Conservation or your local heritage program. Lots of them are looking for volunteers to come out in the field and help them track and relocate and find these rare species. So if you're sort of interested in that, you can reach out to them and then sort of get access to this behind the scenes information to sort of find out where they're located in the field to help redocument them. And so that's what we were headed out to do with this project. One of our state botanists, Todd Crabtree, visited Rock Island State Park in 2009, but he's not a bryologist. He doesn't study mosses, and he thought he saw it. So he was like, "Ooh, I think it's still there at this site." So what we ended up doing was in May of 2019, myself and some of the other members of the herbarium staff and another retired bryologist and Todd Crabtree all went out to Rock Island State Park here in Tennessee in May 2019 on an herbarium excursion to essentially try to figure out if this rare moss was still located at this site in this state park. So this is what it looks like. So we have these rocky sort of vertical bluffs and sort of boulders, and our mosses are growing on these vertical rock faces. And we field identified 5 potential populations where we're like, oh, this looks like our right sort of Pleurocarpus species. And we zoom in, you can sort of see it here. Mosses are tricky to field identify. So we had to collect these populations, take them back into the laboratory and get them under the microscope to actually figure out if we really had Pomalocladium lescuoides or just a different species that sort of looks similar to it in the field. So essentially we got them under the microscope and looked at a bunch of these key features that have to do with the tips of the leaves, with the cells at the bottoms of the leaves and what shape they are, how long the cells are. And out of those 5 populations we collected in the field, under the microscope, we actually only confirmed one of them as Pomalocladium lescuoides, this rare moss that we were hunting for. And so one of the other interesting facts to know about this species is that across most of its distribution, the plants are sexually reproducing, but historically, no sexually reproducing populations were found in North America. So essentially, they're not producing reproductive structures. They're not making these little offspring sporophytes that have little capsules at the top where the spores are produced. So basically, doesn't look like they're sexually reproducing in North America. And in this one population that we found out of 5 that's actually the right species, we found reproductive structures. Basically, these are the first observations of these antheridia in North America. And so essentially antheridia are the reproductive structures that produce the sperm. So the antheridia shown here in this picture have their little lids popped, all the sperm have come out and swam away. But essentially, so we produced a publication in the journal Castania under the noteworthy collection section, basically documenting this observation of these reproductive structures in North America. And so it's sort of interesting thinking about the distribution of this plant, that we're on this far northern edge of the species. And as climate change is happening, sometimes the reproduction is changing of plants and animals. They might be moving in their distributions or gaining reproductive abilities. And so we might see this rare moss reproducing more in North America as sort of the climate's warming. And making it more similar to some of the other locations that it lives in further south. Yeah, so that is sort of my little story about how we used, and so what we're doing is taking this additional information of this rare plant still being in Tennessee, giving it back to the Natural Heritage Program to let them know that, that this rare plant is still present and what its sort of status is in the state. So we're sort of using collections to inform our field work, to then inform our conservation, to then sort of make it full circle. So I have one more sort of shout outy thing, but before I get there, I'll take any questions if anyone has any about the project or what we did. I don't know if we got was there anything in the chat, Miranda? I was trying to see if I pulled that up.
Nothing related to this talk. No, I see a little transcription question, which I can definitely get to. But no, thank you so much, Jessica. That's super fascinating and a neat illustration of how you can use that data to kind of know where to search in the field today. Which is really
and trying to relocate them. So then if nobody has any questions about this piece, I'll flip to my very last slide to do a little plug for the fact that the University of Tennessee Herbarium has sort of started a weekly transcription event. So if you enjoy coming to WeDigBio, WeDigBio is a twice a year event. We've also started hosting weekly transcription events on Fridays via Zoom as well. And so we'll have one tomorrow because we aren't doing WeDigBio for Global. We'll be taking a week off and then we'll sort of be getting back to it on a weekly basis. So yeah.